Do you feel you're fulfilling your purpose? Or do you feel unclear and searching for it? For many of us, discovering and aligning our lives with our purpose is no easy feat. My returning guest, Lisa Morris, spent over 2 decades in corporate consulting leadership roles focused on business and organizational transformation before she got clear on her purpose and changed her work life to be more fulfilling. She realized that her purpose is to help people clearly express who they are in creative ways. Today, Lisa blends her business and design skills to work with entrepreneurs and mission driven organizations to develop their offerings, brands, and business strategies in ways that genuinely connect and resonate deeply with the people they serve. In this episode, Lisa and I reflect on what gets in the way of connecting with our purpose, ways we can distinguish and unblock old beliefs that no longer serve us and get in our way, and learning how to recognize and listen to our purpose so it can inform our choices and make our life feel much more fulfilling. If you have a story to share about lessons learned in recognizing your purpose and living a more fulfilling life, please write to us. Share in the comments if you're on YouTube, or click on the link in this episode description to share your story. Let's dive in. Lisa, it's so good to have you back on, Making Business Art. How are you doing?
I'm well. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We're recording in January of 2026. And hopefully this episode will be published shortly thereafter. We're done recording. And I just wanted to acknowledge that you were a guest all the way back in episode 15. So
Mm,
that we unpacked kind of your background and your story in corporate life and employee experience and all kinds of things that you had explored along the journey of your career. But today we are having a conversation about recognizing and living our purpose. And I've been meaning to have you back on. And then not too long ago, you put out this post on LinkedIn that was like really heartfelt. And it was about purpose and
mm,
thanking some clients that you have worked with recently and just describing how satisfying that was.
mm.
And the topic of purpose is so present and important to so many people. And also just want to just acknowledge that these days, many people are dissatisfied with their work lives. You can see it like the Gallup organization recently published about employee engagement being at a like 10-year low, I think it is. And, and I think people are constantly in the search for their purpose and trying to balance out purpose and aligning their purpose with their work life and kind of making it all work together. So we're going to have a conversation about that today. And I wanted to start with just you just giving just a life update. So you were doing employee experience last time we spoke. What are you doing now? What do you help people accomplish?
Yeah, now more than anything, I'm focusing on three different areas. One in particular is helping, I would say, entrepreneurs or sole proprietors really trying to get clear about what they offer or how they want to offer that to the world in that manner, and helping them design a brand that they feel very authentic in and they can speak to their very specific client profile with that. So a bit
Mhm.
of strategy, a lot of, I would say, clarity making meaning out of what people are trying to describe and helping them articulate some of that. It's all in them. It's just a little bit of how they might be able to explain it more clearly for others to understand it. So a bit of work there. Still doing human-centered design quite a bit with teaching, as well as, in fact, I'm going next week to work with the senior leadership team
Mhm.
who's all about getting aligned on a North Star. So
Mhm.
still kind of focused in the strategy space. That's, in my opinion, sort of brand in a different light, but it's
Mhm.
still trying to articulate what a company's all about and what they're trying to achieve. And then my newfound love has been art of all kinds, frankly. It comes back to history, but I think only in trying to maybe do some digging deeper around purpose for me, new things have come to life that I have not been in touch with for or ever maybe in touch with, quite frankly. So visual art, whether it's fine art or stationery or monogramming or just sketching, quite frankly, have kind of been, yeah, really fulfilling, frankly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what my studio offers now. It's kind of been my a bit of my pivot from the last time we spoke.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting journey because you spent almost 20 years at Accenture, a
Hmm.
consulting company. You also spent then, I think altogether like over a decade or so, like doing employee experience, which is all about people's experience at work,
Hmm.
transformation and change in organizations and like people functions and other related things. I'm sure in your time at Accenture was you spent a long time there. You touched on many different types of problems. We spoke late last year, late
Hmm.
2025, and you were acknowledging we were just having kind of like a pre-conversation to this one, really, what it turned out to be, and it was just really interesting what you shared about when we really dug into the kind of the deeper truth or kind of the core kernel of what you help people accomplish. Do you remember what we were speaking about? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think unbeknownst to me, frankly,
Mm.
there are, I think, things that have been a theme in your life. I was just talking to my sister about this the other day. Too bad we don't learn them sooner than when we do, but maybe we aren't ready to learn those things. But in any case, certain themes that either are like something that has been, I'll just call it a challenge for you, or a wound, or things of that nature that you have yet to sort of unblock. And as you begin to unblock the things that perhaps have been, I would say, just in your way of kind of being who you fully are, it starts to uncover quite a bit around your purpose. So it's like, oh, you don't think you don't define your purpose maybe out of college because you're really looking for more technical moments of career and professional, but like what's becoming like more aware, where what I'm becoming more aware of, or where I'm feeling a little bit more like myself, is searching for what does really make me happy. And I think we all get confused by purpose from a professional perspective or just a life purpose. So now I think of it more like life purpose and the theme that runs through that. But that theme, in my opinion, is emerging because I'm finding out a little bit more about myself, even as old as I am, that there are things that I didn't either receive as a child, or was sort of more highly influenced by things that I thought were going to help me get forward in life. And so what I'm uncovering is that one of my inabilities, or something that I have been longing to actually do, is to express myself. And I know that might sound corny for some people, but
Mm.
you're always expressing yourself. But the
Mm.
question is how well aligned is it to your soul, or to who you really, really are, if you take away all the onion rings and things of that nature. So for me, purpose is sort of in the space of expression, helping other people express who they are. And we can all use the word unapologetically, but I'm a little bit, that word just sort of throws me off a little bit. So it's not even about being apologetic or apologetic, because that means you feel like you're suffering because it, or somebody is putting on you. For me, it was myself.
Mhm.
It's myself who wouldn't allow myself to express. So the thing that I'm finding a lot of value in and finding a lot of fulfillment in is helping other people express
Mhm.
themselves. And in many ways, it's very oriented towards their business. But what I
Mhm.
mean by that in many ways is, what is the thing that helps them provide service to the rest of the world? So it's a little bit nested, so to speak, because expressing yourself and wanting other people to have the ability to express themselves, but also really getting to the core of what they think of as their purpose. Many of whom, which I'm working with, who are coming at purpose from something they experience that they don't want other people to experience, or something that they experience and want to share their knowledge around so that other people don't have to maybe take the same difficult road that they that they took because they're now a little bit more wiser, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, and I think the thing that really I think helps fulfills me is being able to help them like get out the unique ways they express themselves and use those words as the kernel to what is their brand really standing for. So I think it's a little bit of that. And of course,
Hmm.
when it's for business specifically, I've done a lot of personal branding lately too, helping people just even look at their life, frankly, and say like, of all my jobs, not those are the things that have informed me for whatever reason. What is my impact on the world and what kind of impact do I want to make going forward? And for me, that's a bit of purpose. Not so much like you sat one day on your bed and dreamt of purpose, but
Right.
rather purpose from lived felt experience and kind of how that informs your motivation for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, there's a lot there. There's like five different things that bubbled up for me now. Let me see if I can if I can like pull them out in order. I
When I go
think,
on.
well, I think, or something I heard, or at least this is something that I believe and I resonate with, is that this notion that we have to find our purpose, it's a little misguided because I think our the purpose is already baked into who we are, and I think what happens to most of us is that we're conditioned by the world, by what we're supposed to do and what we're supposed to like, and career and so forth, and college and this and that and the other, to embrace or to manufacture a purpose that's not really ours. Right. And for example, I think I shared this last time we spoke. I've met a good number of recovering lawyers in my life who thought that that's what they should be doing. They went through law school, and then sometime after that they figured out like, wow, I really hate this. This is not what I want to do. And then they become a journalist, or they go into some sort of like some other sort of like creative endeavor, or just they just do another career. I've met many people who do that, and that's just
Mhm.
because it's like, oh well, the law, this is a prestigious in career where I can earn money and feel safe, etc. But then the trade-off, it leaves people very very unhappy. And I think there's ways for us to recognize what our true purpose, or what our more genuine purpose is, and align that with our work life, which is what you've been doing now for a while. Yeah. The other thing that reminded me is of from what you were saying. It's a favorite clip of mine, from a clip from an interview with Bruce Lee from around 1971 or so, where he
Mhm.
talks about how truly expressing ourselves honestly, it's a very very hard thing to do. So he acknowledges that he's speaking about his art, but I think it can be just applied to
Yeah.
almost anything. He talks about he can do these very fancy movements and kind of be full of basically ego, and just be just very fake, honestly. But then he says to truly express ourselves honestly is very hard to do, and essentially what then he goes on to say is that we have to train our bodies so that when we want to express something, our body it's able to do it. In fact, there's a snap sound in that this snap sound effect that I add to the podcast that is inspired by that interview with Bruce Lee, because he says is when you want to express something and then he snaps, and then that's where the clip ends. But I get a lot of mileage out of that because he is pointing to a deep truth, which I think you're also speaking to. So in your case, this whole corporate life, etc. But then some years ago, you started to lean into the tools to express your purpose. It was typography and design. So what pulled you to do that? Can you just kind of speak to that a little bit?
Well, even though I don't remember things very vividly as a child, I don't. There's some people that do. There's some people that don't. I do recall times of just spending time with myself on my bed or whatever, and just drawing letters. Always kind of figuring out how many different ways I could present the letter, if you will. So there's like snapshots in my memory of that kind of thing, knowing that I liked it. but never maybe having a mentorship or somebody who would tell me, "Oh, there's actually something you could do with that." I For
Mhm.
me, it was a bit of indulging myself, which I think is a longer story behind this new sort of, I guess, turn from corporate was just the idea that I didn't play. Play became nothing. Play became an thing that I did as a reward to working my bones, if you will. And
Mhm.
so that whole idea of play in a family, I think as well, where parents didn't understand the how critical play is to children. Not in the sense that we didn't play kitchen or things like every normal kid did, but like how play became associated with only childhood and leisure was not something as a family we partake taken together, quite frankly. Vacations
Mhm.
were here and there, but they weren't like a very celebrated, very organized kind of thing. It was like, let's all get in the car and go away for the weekend, sit in a camper together. It was
Mhm.
a primitive vacation, so to speak. And it's not even that I'm complaining about that. It's more about the nurturing that an adult person can give to you about how leisure is not something you give to yourself as a reward. It's
Mhm.
what you should in fact integrate into your life as you do work. It's is equally important as work. So again, I think growing up thinking that work was the only thing that I needed to do, that was the necessity and everything else was indulgent. I didn't practice it. I didn't have those kinds of things. And I do recall even in corporate life when I did the things that were like either designing a presentation or getting the ability to help shape the brand for employees. I got a lot more excited and I got a lot more
Mhm.
imaginative about like what
Mhm.
could be. So I started following that inkling, so to speak. And so when I sort of got burnt out on the employee experience stuff, mostly because I don't know, probably mostly because I had done it for so long and I had gotten to a point in my career where I was tired of trying to explain why it was important. But I'm also realizing that's probably every career choice I've made. I've had to explain
Mhm.
to people why it's important. So I was like, well, then I started thinking, well, maybe everybody has to do that. But I felt like for some functions, it was much more challenging. You don't really have to convince companies why they need a finance department. So it just begins to show you like where logically our analytical brain goes to. But in any case, those were the reason why I got into type. And then I got into it really deeply after I left corporate. I did programs that I learned how to create fonts for myself. And it's still a big part of what I do and what I enjoy doing. But I'm still in the process of figuring out how I incorporate it in in the things that I love to do, because it's funny, I was just journaling the other day and not around purpose per se, but trying to like unblock the theme that was sort of beginning to become a little bit more clear to me. And it's like, oh, pick one. And I like was forcing myself to put like, is it art before brand? Is it design before art? Is it type before this? And then at some point in time, I was like, hell, I think it's just creative acts. And I just left it like it's not one. It's a lot of them. And even this morning, I'm helping a client. I'm designing a workshop, which is creative, but a different sense of creativity. And like, okay, who's the facilitator? How many time we're going to spend on opportunity framing versus ideation? So very structured, and I
Mhm.
can play in that space.
Mhm.
But 2 minutes later, I'm on the floor trying to figure out how the brochure I'm going to create for my client is going to fold properly so that I can have a tuck tab. And so I'm an illustrator. And so and part of me was like, this feels good, but like, am I allowed? Like, am I allowed to do all these different things? And so I still have this proctor
Yeah.
over me who's still trying to tell me, very strong inner critic, that
Mhm.
one, this workshop, because it's very structured and it's for executives and all that stuff, is it more valuable than on the floor with designing the brochure? And so I still find myself, I
Mhm.
think, questioning
Hmm.
the the I'll just call it the pleasure aspect of some things that I really like to do. If I like them a lot, does that mean
Yeah.
they're work, or am I allowed to have fun? So I still have to like catch myself and be like, no, this is just another way of delivering value. Value is not necessarily the way I always thought it was. And so that has been a huge hurdle that I have to kind of
Yeah.
work through
But I
every
mean, it
day.
sounds like to me, because we also design and facilitate workshops, and I wish I could do branding and typography like you do. I have an attraction to that, but might not necessarily be in my wheelhouse of more like natural talent, let's just say.
Um,
But it sounds like in thinking about being on the floor designing a brochure or designing this workshop, this working space for executives, the two activities still have the commonality, as I see it, of clarity, of communication, of communicating something clearly, and not just clarity because that you can just reduce that to efficiency, but it's communicating clearly, but then that communication also is imbued with emotion and passion and
yeah.
other human factors that make the communication effective. Right? I was speaking with a past guest, with my friend Adam Lawrence. He comes from the world of theater, so but in the world of design and innovation, he makes this distinction between practice and rehearsal. So he says
Mm,
practice is when you figured out what you're gonna do and you're just kind of building the muscle memory. The rehearsal is when you have like a dialogue on a page, but now you have to figure out how to bring it to life, right? And making compelling and emotional and connecting and all these different traits that we want a good performance to have for us to be engaged. So we were reflecting on that, and so I think when we kind of circle back to like communication and meetings and the clarity and etc., there's like the language or like the efficiency, or I should say the clarity of what's being said, but then also that needs to be wrapped in emotion and tone and color and
yeah.
texture to make it land and stick and to make it like very compelling and effective.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't quite see a black and white difference between the brochure on the floor and the thing for executives, although I can recognize that one may spark more joy for you than the other. But I think it's
Yeah, I
kind
think
of part of the
it's
same spectrum at the end of the day.
yeah, I think that's the beauty of all of us humans who have a different experience and
Mm,
maybe past influences that help us understand, while they might look the same and have commonalities, the meaning that you
mm,
associated with them
mm,
is different.
yeah.
So I associated the workshop thing as the thing that built me to who I am, who helped me through corporate a little bit.
It's just corporate PTSD. Is that
Yeah,
is that what you're
maybe.
saying?
I think that's a definite thing. I thought about writing a book about that, to be honest
Mm-hmm.
with you. But yeah, it felt safer. It feels safer a little
Mm-hmm.
bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it feels safer because, to your point, I've practiced it for a very, very long time. Whereas in the brochure thing, it's something I'm really experimenting and exploring with, which is fun. But as we all know, there's a lot of more unknown in many ways to it. Now, these executives can like completely surprise me with naughty behavior, is how I describe it,
Mm-hmm.
not aligned, disgruntled themselves or not aligning with each other. And that'll be a whole thing to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just it's a thing where I'm trying to allow myself to get on the floor and design the brochure. I'm trying in many ways to practice what I preach, which is, yeah, build the prototype. Don't worry about it being perfect. See what works, test it. Be okay that you might have to do it 10 times before it actually gets better, so to speak. And it was funny because a very long time ago I worked with this energy coach, and she
Mm-hmm.
told me that at the time I was just getting into human centered design, and she told me, this is going to be your lesson in life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all she said to me. And I was like, all right, whatever. I was like a little bit dubious about like how people say things,
Mm-hmm.
and and you're like, on what basis would you say that? But anyhow, obviously she felt it in some sort of way. But yeah, like giving myself patience to actually explore something that I like, and getting more comfortable with the fact that design isn't indulgent. It's just another way of getting things done, frankly.
Yeah. Can you tell me about how purpose shows up for you, maybe through a story, like a recent client where do you remember a moment or moments where you really felt connected with purpose?
Yeah. I was helping this client. It's a more recent client. She supports women who are, or I should say women, but individuals who are going through life transitions. I'll just call it that way. Trying to keep it confidential in many ways. But
Mm-hmm.
in any case, a lot of it, what I learned was that she assumed I knew quite a bit about what that was like, the idea of going through such a life transition. And I've never been through that type of life transition. So I was curious a little bit more about it, but I felt I literally did the empathy exercise. Like I literally put myself in the shoes of these different people. And it was because I had done it like in a more felt sense than just like a logical analytical brain sense. I was able to come up with the headlines for the brand and all of the sort of, I would say, marketing materials in many ways that really resonates with her as the provider, but more
Mm-hmm.
deeply with her clients. And so as I was kind of writing or coming up with the brand, it is the brand that I've never felt so clear about, frankly. Like to be able, like with branding, sometimes it's like writing a story, quite frankly. At least for me it is. It's writing a story and knowing what every chapter is going to be able to, what you're going to write in every chapter, versus writing a brand or creating a brand that you're unsure about what chapter 5 is going to be about. Like it's, the story is so clear to me, whether it's for, she has multiple stakeholders, but the story for them is so clear to me. And I have no hesitation with designing anything, whether it's a brochure or a business card, because like that word imbued just is really a word that I love. It just like it oozes. It's like it's so easy. Whereas I've worked with other brands, equally effective, but a little less felt, a little less, like a little bit more too much, maybe a little too much structure. So anyway, and the interesting thing is the client base for the transition one is primarily financial services, which I find to be quite stoic. And
Mm-hmm.
so anyhow, I think the beauty of it was just having, I mean, I feel like I was like, I feel like I own this brand. And I know that
Yeah.
sounds really harsh, but it's like I got so close to it by
Yeah.
researching the topic, by understanding more deeply what the impact could be,
Mm-hmm.
that the visuals just, they came alive. And I don't think I've ever felt that like quick, like, oh wow, it looks like this, it feels like this, you wouldn't do that if you were that of this brand, you would do
Mm-hmm.
this, like, yeah. So it was a little bit of that. It was just the
Yeah.
beauty of being able to sit there and envision something
Yeah, I
quite
just want to pull a thread. You just said something. You said financial services, and you figured that that's very stoic. And what came up for me was that we have a lot of stories. Each one of us has a lot of stories about money. In financial services, man, there's a lot of emotion wrapped up around money and assets and safety. And so I can agree that it's something that's represented in this very dry stoic way. But at the same time, isn't there like a lot of opportunity to tap into emotion and approach that differently?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. This is where that lovely corporate thing gets in my way because I'm
Okay.
kind of like, they said
Yeah.
at one point in time, again, just trying to keep confidentiality, but like,
Mm-hmm.
can we change the picture of the woman that's in there? She's just like too pretty.
Okay.
And I was sort of like,
Wonder what stories behind that comment.
exactly,
It's like, what's
exactly.
going on there?
But anyhow, it was that was a moment. I think the moment of like sharing it with her and her being like, "How did you come up with this? Like, how did you, and not for the validation of it, but just she was
Mm.
like so much like, how did you capture that story so well?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
it's so funny because I was talking to my husband. He goes, because I've always said to him, like, I am, I think I skipped English or English skipped me and spelling and all those other things skipped. Like, I don't know, maybe I was drawing in class that day. I have no idea, but like, English was never my forte. Like,
Mm.
grammar, I don't even, my husband's like, I'm like, is that a preposition? Is that what you call that thing? My husband's like, did you not, were you not around for English? And I'm like, I just wasn't listening. And so I don't at all consider myself a writer. If you tell me to create a paragraph, I'm like, oh shit.
Mm.
But I can do short phrases, and now of course with all these great AI tools that they'll help you make sure your grammar is right. So I'm like,
Yeah.
god, thank god for that. I don't know if I trust it all the time, but thank god for it. So
Mhm.
my husband for a long time used to write, was thinking about writing books, and I said, I'm not writing a book because I'm a writer. I'm writing a book because I want to tell somebody about something. So I used to send it to my husband. I said, and I want you to red ink the hell out of it. Like, I want to know what kind of mistakes I'm making. And after a while, he's just like, you're making the same mistakes over and over again. Like, you're not
Mm.
learning from my marks. And I
Mhm.
said, I really don't want to. I have no interest in it. Like, it was the first time I was just like, maybe I'm okay with you fixing it. I don't know.
Mhm.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is, for me, like, story was like, you shouldn't write a story if you can't write. Like, there, I guess what I'm trying to say is,
Mm.
I had these
Yeah.
like,
Right.
these you shouldn't because you aren't, or you should
Mhm.
because you are, kind of mental models, which they're all rubbish. I mean, I obviously have
Mhm.
come to that they were all just things that I thought I learned because they kept me safe, or they made me feel better about my own situation, or whatever the case may be. But that's quickly like, the layers are like, nope, that didn't
Yeah.
work. And so you can clearly see like, what did I get from some of this stuff?
Yeah.
And so I don't know where that took us, but yeah,
Well, I mean,
I had these beliefs, these aren't true. I believed what I wanted. I
I
believed what I
mean
thought
that
was.
speaks to things that were made up by somebody at some point, and
Yeah.
then it just
Oh,
becomes like the thing to do or the thing to believe, kind of mainstream, whatever.
yeah.
In fact, the thing that you said about writing, it's interesting because you work on
Hmm.
branding, and helping people express themselves, but there's like an emotional depth to that that I've been thinking about this a lot lately. That language really doesn't capture. Like language really captures like a fairly narrow band of the human experience. Because if we think about what's going on in our bodies and our psyche, have you had like a really beloved person pass away?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, if you can, well, it's not the best thing to do right now, but if you connect, if you remember that grief,
Hmm.
are there really words
That can express it.
that
Yeah.
can express that fully? No, there's not.
Mm-mm.
Right.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes I like to ask people who are parents. It's like, do you remember the first time you held your newborn, and like, can you really connect with that? And sometimes they get a little misty eyed or
Yeah.
weepy, and they're like, yeah, okay, I can connect with that. And then I ask them like, the words really describe that fully, and they admit they're like, no, not by a long
Yeah.
shot.
No, that's a really good point.
So
It's
I
a really,
think there's just so much emotion and feelings and things that are nonverbal, preverbal, non-language that we experience, and that's why we have words like, oh, the X factor. It's just an X factor. We can't even freaking describe what it
yeah.
is that we're feeling in our body, but we just know that it's very engaging and attractive and
Yeah.
energizing or whatever
Yeah.
else, right?
Yeah.
So it's not all that altogether off or weird that maybe you don't feel like you have that affinity to language when you're trying to like help somebody kind of dig into a deeper emotion and express that truth,
Yeah.
that then we use language to point to what that is,
Right.
but the language is not it. It's something deeper within us.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I will say, the only thing I would say is that when I was building this brand and other brands, when people would use words, I was like, that's not the right word. I feel like that's not the right
because
word.
there's like an emotional resonance associated with it. But
Yeah,
I think you can brand with sound.
right.
I mean, have you ever like smelled something and it just like snaps you back to a time when you were younger? Like, oh my God, like this, like a food or a perfume or
Mhm.
something.
Yeah,
And I think smell is one of the most like powerful senses associated with memory that we'll remember. Or that scene in the movie Ratatouille when the kind of cranky critic person tries this dish and then he just remembers when he's a kid. And
yeah,
and that's like a very emotional moment for that character because of just
right.
the power of just
Taking you back.
our
Yeah,
sensory system working and connecting us with memories. I also just wanted to acknowledge because this didn't kind of come up all that clearly for the audience, and of course we've had conversations offline that you grew up in this household, immigrant household,
mhm.
where kind of resources were tight, and I think your folks were just trying to make it and survive, but then that also comes with certain beliefs or ways of being and just kind of more stories of lack and control and constraint that many people, many of us have experienced in some way or another. Also grew up in a household that was peaceful and loving, but then also resources were also very tight. So
Right.
and then we create our money stories and other stories out of that and what we need to do in the world to be safe, et cetera, and that all and that serves us for a little bit, but then it starts to become a problem or a limitation later
Yeah.
on.
Well, I'll just add another layer to that, which
Yeah.
is there was five of us. My brother has since passed away, unfortunately,
Mm,
but there were five children. My parents, again, they did I think everything that they possibly could to
mm-hmm,
make, and it wasn't all struggle, but I mean,
mm-hmm,
whether or not you're rich and have a wealthy childhood, or whether you have a normal or not so normal childhood from a resourcing perspective. It's just that you everybody adapts to something, right?
mm-hmm.
But one thing I heard which really hit home for me, and it's to add on to your sort of conversation around money, is that no one child lives has the same experience, has the same parents, and lives in the same house. No one.
That's true.
Even though we think we do, no one does. As a point to that, like, while I may struggle with my relationship with money, I told my husband, he looked at me, he's like, "What are you talking about?" I was just like, "It's real." But
Mm-hmm.
I have siblings that don't.
Yeah.
So I think, again, I experienced something different. Maybe first child, second child, third child. Parents are in different levels of maturity or development themselves. As much as you think, your brother, your sister, we all grew up together. No, y'all had a whole different unique experience, and that's what's shaping you. In fact, that's probably what's shaping your purpose as well. And if we get back to purpose, I think that's the thing that, you know, whether it's whether it's money as a means of expressing yourself, or whether it's money as a means of not allowing myself to indulge in something that it's going to cost money, or whatever the case may be. It's the idea of excess, or what's unnecessary. Like, where does the line between necessary and unnecessary
Mm-hmm.
drawn? And also growing up as a Catholic, which is another
Oh yeah.
another crazy thing to add to the whole mix. Like, I just grew up knowing that, like, a lot of desire,
Mm-hmm.
for all the above and beyond, materialism, all that kind of stuff, was kind of not really celebrated, or sort of ashamed. But I have come to learn a lot about, like, but now I want to enjoy beauty. I want to have, not necessarily, I'm not a very materialistic things, but I do know that I love beautiful things. And we all know that beauty is in the eye of the beholder and all that kind of stuff. But, like, I finally come to a point where I'm like, I like that. It's pretty. I don't fucking care if anybody else like it. I'm gonna get it. Excuse my language, but, like, that's pretty. Like, it's a bit of a breakthrough for me, because I'm kind of like, I'm not so much worried about it being on the indulgent side
Yeah.
anymore. I know probably sounds crazy, but the idea of pleasure and desire and spending time and money on things that aren't necessities, like food in the refrigerator, like the gas bill, like that's like for some people that's like you haven't been living. And I think my answer to that question is you're damn right I have not been living.
Yeah, that all resonates very familiar. I grew up in a not just in a household, but like an entire country that was pretty much. I think at the time it was like 95% Roman Catholic, and I went to Catholic school, so it was just very rigid. Some very unfortunate lessons.
Hmm.
To give you an example of rigid, when I was in school down there, you had to like do your homework and present your homework, but your homework could not have an eraser smudge. Or later when it was typing in those typewriters, remember those?
No
It
white
couldn't
out.
couldn't have whiteout, and if it had whiteout, they would just give you a zero, which communicated. Looking back, I'm like, wow, that communicates that the content is irrelevant. You just have to be like very rigid in following these things. And then when I many years later, I was here in the States, and I went to a very kind of crazy liberal arts college where to my shock, some of my fellow students would kind of take like recycle paper, like you have one side, you X it out.
Yeah.
Not only was it X'd out, it might have like a footprint of a shoe on it. And they would just flip it and print the essay on the other side. And the professor did not care about that. The professor just cared about the ideas. In fact, I remember when I first got there and I got like a report cover and made this like very nice, clean, fancy presentation for my essay. My professor, like, she told me off. She's like, don't do this again. Like, I don't care about, like, do not give me a paper with this stuff on it. So such a contrast
Yeah.
from one educational experience to another. Just so much there to reflect about. But then I'm curious, just to come back to purpose. Where do you feel your purpose is leading you right now? What's your sense?
I don't know. Like I've been spending some time a little bit in it, and it's definitely about helping people or helping myself express myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a little bit about an awakening a little bit. So I'm thinking a lot about like awakening, meaning that to your point earlier, they're there, but they've been dormant for
Yeah.
so long. And how are you like allowing yourself or giving yourself permission to kind of break through these very strong beliefs that haven't served you, frankly. Some have served you very well. Like I'm a very principled person. So I think that kind of served me, maybe to a fault and discipline. But in any case, like a little bit of kind of awakening a little bit more and sort of allowing, holding the space or providing the platform for other people to sort of awaken. And I don't necessarily mean that in like a spiritual way per se, although
Mm-hmm.
it's completely acceptable if
Mm-hmm.
that is. But that's the very thing I think like when we kind of laugh about my corporate life and kind of like going back. I don't have any interest in going back. I think it is so I think I associate it with feeling like expression was only acceptable if it worked for your boss or your company or whatever and that again that could be my own belief system. Other people could
Mm-hmm.
have had different experiences. And while I learned a lot at Accenture, I also felt like that was a time where everything went to sleep. Like everything that I thought was where I should spend my time and my efforts is what made me go completely to sleep. Me being like the person who I really am, right? And so this idea of awakening and maybe enabling others to awake to their truth, but it's like truth, beauty, and maybe even I love the idea of like what is possible for one individual if they break through some of this stuff, and how can I help them make what they don't believe is possible for them. And I've always sort of loved being the idea, like I never wanted to be a coach. My sister always used to say you should be a physical trainer because I really enjoy keeping your body strong and things like that, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not something. I'll just say that I'm barely 5 feet and I wanted to take lifeguarding lessons and become a lifeguard. And I did it. But the guy told me, you probably aren't going to be all that great at this. And I said, why? He goes, you're less than 90 pounds. Like they're going to kill you. So it's like the physics don't work here, girl.
You'll drown with the other person.
I know. I was just like, okay, you just scared me. I think I'll stop. But after having almost drowned it as a kid, it was like, how can I get my strength back around being in the water? And I was like, oh, I'll try and do lifeguarding, which was ultra terrifying equally. So, but
Mm,
anyhow, like, yeah, I feel like the purpose thing is awakening. I don't know. I think the clarity and the communication and helping people express, like, I don't have my purpose statement clearer yet.
mm,
And I still, if I'm being 100% honest, I keep asking myself, are you pushing this too hard? Like, are you trying
mhm,
to figure out your purpose so you can like check the box and like allow it to be something? Or are you just tired of trying to unblock it and try to find it? And so I'm being very indecisive about it because I'm
mhm,
kind of like, but I've also heard people say, like, stop doubting it. Like, if you have an inkling to something, like if you are drawn to something, it is likely because there's an element of you that it exists in you, whether it's art or history
yeah.
or something, right? And so stop like saying no, maybe start saying yes and seeing what exactly of that thing
Mhm,
is really what you enjoy. And then of
yeah.
course then the perfectionist in me takes over so
Oh
it's a
no.
little I'm still unwinding. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
but I think
complicated right now,
that
but
that advice is really interesting if we can start applying it, like if we can rewind the clock in our own life and look at when like we were really young, because in your case the purpose was kind of present there, just kind of bubbling up now and then, but
mhm,
you didn't necessarily had the guidance and the environment and kind of the resources, and I'm
right.
not talking about money, but
Yeah,
other
yeah.
things like mentors and so forth, to say like, hey, this is, let's kind of like look at this more. My friend Vaijanti, she's very blessed. She grew up in Chicago with parents, immigrant parents from India, and she's blessed in that her mom, when she was like 2, her mom noticed that she just really was drawn to dance and movement, and so her mom just put her in like classical Indian dance and I think some other things, like at the age of like 2 or 3. And you see her dance now. She's like a business anthropologist and is doing like AI stuff these days. But she's so graceful.
Mm.
And when she told me a story of like, hey, did you know? I said like, how did you get into this? And that her mom recognized that and like had the not just the means, but the you have to take her to
Yeah.
take the child to the thing and like make the time for that. And I think your mom's like a doctor, so it's also like a very busy person, but she still made the commitment to nurture that aspect of her child. And then Vajanti is just like just really awesome dancer. So
Yeah, if I were to put like the
yeah.
things that a parent should do on their list, that would be on the top of my list.
Yeah. So I think that's a good segue to the last pass here at this conversation that I wanted to make, and that is advice for our younger selves, and maybe some thoughts for either younger people or just people that are on the journey of really trying to connect with that purpose, but maybe have a little less clarity than we have, or did they just kind of really feel unclear about what direction to take. So looking back, if you found a version of
Mm.
yourself, like a young person that just reminded you of you back in the day, what would you do for this person if this person showed up and you're like, oh my god, let me help you out. Like what advice, what would you do? Yeah, what
Yeah.
course of action might you take?
I would definitely like there's a couple of things. I would definitely even though mentorship is a very personal kind of like I feel like mentorship's something like luck in the universe that they privileged people get really good mentors is kind of how I think about it because it's a luck game like somebody's put in your path to kind of guide you.
Mm-hmm.
I mentorship would have been critical for would have been key for me as
Yeah.
a maturing human. I never found somebody that I really respected enough or they were doing something that I was so in love I too could find myself in love with that it felt like ooh bits and pieces of it but it's funny because nowadays you can think a little bit more about a mentor, more like an expander. It doesn't have to be like this person who guides you, but this person who represents something that you aspire to be, even if it's just like, I like how you dress. Like nothing, it doesn't have to be
Mm-hmm.
like hugely significant. I think the thing that I would say, my sister would probably laugh at me, is you don't have to pick one route, one path. Like I feel like I stayed on the path too long, like the corporate path for too long. And I think I did it for many reasons, and they were all probably valid. But again, if I had somebody else could have maybe helped me see the signs that it was probably time to try something new, I think that would have been, I think I would be in a completely different place. I don't know if I'll be in a better place because I found this place and it feels pretty good right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think feeling like you've already invested so much in one path, and you're afraid to move for whether it's for money, or whether it's for feeling stupid again, or not prepared again, or and not learning that, not understanding that this is life. It's all about growth and learning. Like who no one told me that. I felt like that was like, shit, I made another mistake. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to get like the best salary or whatever the
Right.
case may be. But like that's something that I learned in childhood, and then it was even more deeply more embedded to me at
Mm-hmm.
Accenture, which was like mistakes.
Right.
No, I mean, down to like, that's not aligned to the right side of the right page. Your numbers are off. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the very much of like fear of like, if I get it wrong, then I'm not gonna be successful, which is
Right.
really very limiting. And I don't think that's necessarily how the environment is today as much,
Mm-hmm.
but it is certainly part of I think, the generation that I grew up in. So yeah, I would say like, if you have inklings, explore them. Don't let what's currently your current path is stop you. You can enjoy multiple things. You can do multiple things. You don't have to just be a lawyer, be a doctor, be a
Mm-hmm.
consultant. Yeah, I think that would be one of my biggest pieces of advice. And knowing that it's going to change over time. And that's why I feel like I was talking to my sister, and her son's at a point in time was like, it's time to pick a major. And I'm like, why do they make these kids pick a major? I mean, I get it, but I don't get it because it's kind of like, they don't know unless they came out of
Mm-hmm.
the womb saying, I want to be a doctor, which, if that's the case, likely not. But in any case, like, it just sets them up for like, I've chosen something, and now my parents have invested what is now huge amounts of money for me to be mastered in it through schooling. And now what happens if I don't like it when I get there? Like, the pressure is massive.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that just makes me think of like the importance of, man, and this is a tough one, like being discerning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to help with somebody, like just give advice about discernment, I think,
Mm-hmm.
versus being there for somebody and just asking questions like, hey, are you sure about this, or did you see
Yeah.
this over here, or like, do we want to try out this over here? And that makes me think of like, say there's a young person that's very smart,
Mm.
and the parents or the teacher story is, when you're smart, then you can only do like this one or other career. Where that shows up, that's shown up in my social circles. Much love to all my Indian friends and Indian people, but remember remember one time I met somebody who is an engineer. He said he engineered like these kind of like control boards that you see in NASA for like
Mm.
aerospace. And curious person that I am, I said like, hey, so why what drew you
Why
to
this
engineering? And he said like, well, I don't like medicine. And I was like, so that was
medicine
the only
is
other choice, which is pretty common in the Indian diaspora. But I think intelligence can be expressed like, meaning like intellectual, kind of like intellectual horsepower is what I'm referring to. That can be expressed in like many ways. So it's not like, oh, you're smart. Here's a smart 8-year-old, and therefore your possible career path is like A or B. And then it gets trickier when we're looking at talents like yours, which is more like deep intuition and kind of working with emotion, and like
mm.
clarifying that and like expressing it in ultimately you're doing it like in the form of like a brand. Somebody might do it in dance or acting, or
Yeah, music.
or
Well,
something
yeah.
else. But I mean, as of now, I'm pretty firm in the belief that it's something that's always already been there for us, and I think part of the game is learning to recognize it, like learning to recognize the stories that
Mm,
people download into our heads versus what's really there, and how what's really there, how can that be expressed, and then recognizing the form of expression that is the best and most satisfying fit for each of us.
yeah.
And that's tricky. I think there's very few people who are blessed with the clarity and the mentors and the resources and all the things that align to make that happen, and then they'll die when they're like 27 or something.
I
some other
know.
some other way that life gets you. I'm just thinking of like rock stars from the 60s, like Jimi Hendrix and Jim Morrison and some other
Well, they weren't
some.
doing very good things for their body, but okay.
Well, yeah, there were. Yeah, that's true. They were not having the healthiest of lives, but anyway, I appreciate this conversation, Lisa, and I
Yeah,
hope that listeners maybe find at least some comfort or a reminder or some nugget of
yeah,
information or insight in this conversation that serves their own journey in some way. Do you
yeah.
have any closing thoughts? Anything else that you wanted to share about this topic of purpose and living into it?
No, I guess I think the only thing I would say is that if you're young, follow the pings of things that you like and discover how they make you feel, and ask yourself, are you trying to use it to serve yourself, or are you using it to serve others? And I
Mm-hmm.
think in many cases I may be a little unpopular by saying it, but I think when it serves you and it serves others, it is the sweet spot versus when it's just servicing others. Because that
Yeah,
lovely saying, if you can't help anybody else, if you can't help yourself. So
that's true.
finding something that you really enjoy that you can use to help other people do something that they are hoping for, I think, how can you go wrong?
I double down on that. I used to work with nonprofits in within one and then as a funder, and yeah, you could see like a lot of people just burning out, just
Hmm.
serving others without the balance of doing something for themselves. So I've
Yeah.
seen that up close and personal. So I think that that's very wise. Lisa, can you just remind us the name of your studio, where people can find you, and why should they look you up?
Yeah, so I have Studio L, so it's SUDIO dash L, which is not very common, but everyone else was taken. So StudioL.com, dot co, not a com.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, come find me if you need some support with branding, brand strategy, if you're starting or launching a new business, like you, if you have some complex team dynamics and you want to figure out how to deal with alignment or designing good experiences. And yeah, if you have great art, I'd love to see it. And I'd love to show you some of my art. So, yeah, those are the reasons why you should come find me. Love this conversation as well. Ezekiel, I know you and I sort of feel like there's a connection. Well, I don't sort of feel, I feel the connection. So, thank you for inviting me and for having me.
For sure. Well, thank you for sharing your valuable time with me today
Mm.
and for sharing. So we'll probably have you back another time. But
Oh,
for the meantime, we'll say goodbye for now.
all right. Thank you.